afternoon. May I ask your name, please?
Yes, I'm Annie King Morris, native of Winter Garden, born, raised here, lived here most of my life.
Can you tell us, Mrs. Morris, how it is that you came to live in Winter Garden?
Well, I can. My grandfather moved to Winter Garden in the early 20s, 1920s, and he brought his family, among which was my father, Joseph Edward King Jr. In the meantime, a beautiful little girl from Edison, Georgia, moved to Winter Garden. Those two met and became Joe and Eddie Mae King. And from that union, there were 8 children, 4 boys and 4 girls. My oldest brother died in infancy. Then it was my older sister, 2 brothers, myself, and then a sister, brother, sister, Juanita, James, Charles, Bernice, Billy, and Brandon. So we had a good life here, My father was one of the citrus workers here, and he had a good experience. He was a hard worker, and he did much for his family. He was one of those men who believed in family, believed in God, lived a good Christian life, and therefore he was able to flourish. He had been a friend to the Tonys, one of the first African American families that came to Winter Garden. And they had a daughter, Caroline Tony. And during her growing up ages, she went to college. And my dad said, I want my daughter to go to college. There we have my first sister, oldest sister, was one of the first African Americans to attend college, and not only attend, but graduate. One of the first black graduates in Winter Garden. And my dad was pleased. And then she didn't just graduate and leave. She graduated and spent her life working and educating the children in the community, outside of the community, leading them on Christian experiences. So she was an icon in Winter Garden. And we're gonna do a little back spacing. My grandfather, when he came, he sported a top hat. He had a chain watch in his pocket, and he and his boys came to Winter Garden, and everybody was wondering, who is that rich black man? And he came in making noise. He started a crew because there was a lot of citrus and there were farming in Winter Garden. And he had a farming group, had a big mouth, which in the 20s was not a good thing for a black man, but he didn't care. He spoke out about the conditions that the blacks were going through, and he also talked about the wages. But it didn't go well with the group that we're all familiar with, the Ku Klux Klan. They decided it was time to shut him up because they'd been talking about black people voting and other issues that they didn't feel black people should be a part of. And he was, along with another black preacher, and I think they say a white man had done something disrespectful to his wife. But they were taken to Black Lake and they were beaten, and he was left for dead, but God's grace allowed him to live, and they were able to get him out of Winter Garden. So that sort of broke up the family. Most of the family members left Winter Garden, but my dad stayed. And it's really interesting because he stayed. His children did well. My oldest brother went to the service, had a wonderful career in the service, 26 years. My other brother, he did his patriotic duty, but then he came back to Winter Garden, and he was the first black policeman in Winter Garden. So it's like my granddaddy's message was still here because his children's children were doing well, and they were showing that they're not inferior. They're God's kids, just like they're any other kids. And then I, Annie Ruth King, I went to Washington, D.C., because after college they said, go to D.C., go to D.C., you can get a good job, good government job, benefits, live well. So I went to Washington, D.C., I married, raised my family there, four boys, 2 girls. And the marriage didn't work, so then I came back to Winter Garden. I love Winter Garden. I missed the orange trees. I had an orange grove right in front of my house, and we can run out there and get oranges, grapefruits, tangerines. I mean, it was like it was ours. One day I went to work. The next day I came home. My grove was gone. I was so hurt. And another reason I liked Winter Garden, it was a productive little town for blacks. We had businesses. We had Center Street. Center Street was our popular street then. And the Holtz had a barber shop, a dry cleaning, a soda fountain, a pool hall, other members, the Dysons had a taxi cab. We had restaurants, Miss Jenny's Cafe, Egertha, Marion had a boarding house, and back in the 30s, they had bad baseball teams. They weren't their major leagues. But when they would come to town, the black players didn't have any, they could not stay in the hotels with the white ones. So they stayed in Egertha Marion's boarding house. She let them live there. They ate there, and they, socialized in the community. We also had places for the ladies to dress up on Saturday night and dance. We had bars, nice nightclubs, and it was really a good place to live, despite our problems. Of course, in the South, there would be racial problems I think even in the 70s. I don't think the Ku Klux Klan was as bad as they had been, but I remember once they did march. I remember Mr. Harold Bowler took some black boys up to the little swimming pool in Winter Garden, which was for the white kids. When those black boys jumped in the water, he said, jump in it. We're free, we are entitled. Well, quickly, heads start turning and eyes and ideas start popping, and they built a swimming pool in the black neighborhood. They still weren't ready for integration. But I think in, was it 60s probably, they started, because I graduated from junior high in 1957, but I had to be bused to Jones High. And in 1956, they made Drew High a high school so that we wouldn't have to be bused. But because I had gone 2 years, my family decided they wanted me to graduate from Jones. But we did get a high school here. This was still to avoid integration, but eventually the schools were integrated. But my thing about integration, there were some good things and some bad things. After integration, the businesses in the black communities started dwindling. Now if you go down our favorite street, Center Street, there are no businesses, there's nothing. It's dismal and neglected. integration. The kids were bused. They didn't know the teachers didn't know them. There are cultural differences. A lot of times people don't talk about them, but there are. There are things that black kids understand from a black teacher that white teachers who might be ever so smart, ever so loving, but you have not dealt with them, so you don't know how to deal with black kids. And I always told my sister, who was the teacher, it doesn't matter if the school is filled up with the smartest white teachers in the land. If they can't discipline, if they don't know how to discipline, control the classroom is still, the black kids will still not learn anything. You have to know, and you have to show love. It was hard for some of the white teachers because they had their ideas of what blacks were like, and they could not deal with it, you know. So as we go forward, we got to understand that there are cultures, and each culture has a way of its own, and they should be respected. You know, I've heard black people say, don't associate me with fried chicken and collard greens. I say they have gotten white on us. I grew up, black people grew up. Give me some good fried chicken, macaroni and cheese, potato salad, potato pie, iced tea. That's a good meal to me. Sometimes I prefer that to 8-ounce big thick steak, you know.